I think this is a worrisome development and portends what I think is going to be a dangerous period for U.S. China economic relations. To me, this relationship is a relationship of codependency, where China has long depended on U.S. markets to support export-led growth, but the U.S. has depended a lot on China to provide cheap goods to make ends meet for American consumers, cheap capital to help us fund our budget deficits, and an increasingly important source of demand for U.S. exporters. China's America's third largest and most rapidly growing export market. So both sides of the relationship are now in play. Well, the logic that's being used to protect American workers from what the president calls the ravages of bad trade deals is fundamentally flawed. If he were to present that argument in one of my courses at Yale, I would give him a failing grade, and I'm an easy grader. And trade deficits in the United States or in any country don't occur out of thin air. Last year, 2017, the United States had merchandise trade deficits with 102 countries. China was the biggest, but by higher math, that means there's 101 other countries. And so we have a multilateral trade problem, and the reason is that we don't save. Our national savings rate, which is the sum of savings of individuals, businesses, and the government sector, adjusted for depreciation, is 2%. And so lacking in saving and wanting to grow, we import surplus savings from abroad, and we run a giant balance of payments deficit and a multilateral trade deficit with 102 countries to attract the foreign capital. That's where the trade deficits come from. And so by focusing on a bilateral deficit with one country, even if it's big, if you don't address the savings problem, you're not going to fix it. And the fiscal policy of the Trump administration is actually going to push our national savings rate even lower. So the trade deficits are going to get bigger over the next few years. And going after China will not in any way whatsoever address this increasingly insidious problem. No, there are no winners in a trade war. I wrote an article a couple of months ago called "How to Lose a Trade War," and it addressed this problem very explicitly, just arguing that in a globalized world where capital flows and trade flows through supply chains are woven into the fabric of most major economies, to start to dismantle that process is a losing strategy for anyone who wants to engage in a trade war. Well, I think there are actually three areas that I would stress. Number one would be to re-engage on a regular basis in terms of high-level discussions. In the last 10 years, we've had the strategic economic dialogue, the strategic and economic dialogue, recently the comprehensive economic dialogue. They meet once or twice a year, and then there's no follow-up. I think that approach is not a good approach. We need a permanent secretariat that has staffed by experts from both sides, that has ongoing consultation and discussion. Number two, this is a time to break the logjam on negotiations with a bilateral investment treaty. This has been going on for 9 years. We've gotten nowhere. And both countries have markets that need to be opened up for companies and multinationals from both sides. And a bilateral investment treaty between the two largest economies is long overdue. And thirdly, there are a lot of soft power issues that need to be addressed from the U.S. side, from the Chinese side, and they get into thorny areas of intellectual property rights, cyber hacking, nationalism. Those need to be put on the table and addressed much more proactively.